Now we go back to the very beginning question that I asked. Why was the U.S. disillusioned after the war? And this is something that you have to understand, that the U.S. was disillusioned. The U.S. won. We are one of the victors. And in fact, if it wasn't us, that war would not have been won. Not only that, when the war is over, our economy booms. Why is this? You guys understand this, right? War effort. War effort. All products directed to the war. That means that production is increased significantly. Where is the war fought? In Europe. So if the United States has no destruction, we don't have to rebuild. We have lots of lost lives, but we don't have to rebuild. So what happens to our economy? Temporarily, and your books are just kind of crazy on this, they emphasize this 1919 panic. And so temporarily, there is a dip, an economic panic, as we shift from war to consumers. But as soon as that is done, the economy absolutely booms. This is why it is the roaring 20s. Toasters, cars, radios, appliances, refrigerators, washing machines. People were not spending money during the war effort, so no money spent. Does that mean that they weren't earning money? Less money spent, right? Of course not, because our production is extremely high. So that means that actually the amount of money is higher in people's savings. So as soon as we make the shift from the war to a commercial economy, people are buying stuff left and right. The economy absolutely booms. So but why aren't we happy from this? But what, it's not that we're shell-shocked. We won the war. We should be happy. Why aren't we happy?
It's really going to get nothing out of it.
Because we failed. What was our objective of the war? We weren't shooting for things. What was the U.S. war aim? The war objective. What did we want to get out of the war? We wanted law on earth. And did we get that? No. That's why we are disillusioned. Does this make sense? And so we are disillusioned so much that what do? We can have two different approaches. And it's funny what your textbooks focus on. So let's say I am a kid. I'm in a contest. I get the most points, but I don't get the trophy that I was looking at, best of show. I didn't get best of show. I won all my stuff. I didn't get best of show. Let's say at 4-H. I won all my divisions, but I don't get best of show. I'm disappointed. What can I do? A couple of options. Okay, I failed to get best of show. What are the two options? How many of you guys are 4-H kids? Okay, we need more 4-H kids. But go ahead. What are your options? Just even if you're not in 4-H, this is a very human psychology. I put my cow in here, okay, or the sheep, whatever it is. I win all the contests. I don't get best of show. You what? What are you complaining about?
The fact that you want to really good winner.
Yeah, and I should have, right? And I really should have, right? Because I put so much effort into this, I should have won this. So one option is that I give up. I'm not going to do this again. What's the other option? And let's be honest, probably the more frequent option.
Try again.
I'm going to do better, right? I'm going to be better. I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to be better. What am I going to be better? I'm going to fix what was wrong. In language, we call this reform, right? Reform means I'm going to change what I did to make it better. What about this giving up? This is a word that kind of fits, but it doesn't really fit, because you don't usually fall into despair and kill yourself when you don't win Best of Show, right? But you can say to people, I just don't care about it anymore. Okay, so nihilism means nothing matters. So this is obviously an extreme term, so please take it as it is. But when you were reading about the 1920s, what did you see? Now, big booming economy, right? Huge booming economy. But what did you see? What did they talk about most often? What do we describe the 1920s as? The jazz age, right? Flappers. People talking about sex, having sex all the time, doing all sorts of naughty things. And we talk about prohibition, right? Because there's gangs, and there's people having gang wars, lots of bloodshed. You can look at this and you can say this is one extreme. This would be, you could call it the flapper jazz age. The only problem with this is that unfortunately and I'm spelling this wrong, of course, exaggerated. It's usually two R's, two G's. It's constantly here. This is the other. We'll use this $3.5 word. Hyperbole, right? It's an exaggeration. This is not what the whole of the country is doing. This is not what defines all of the side. The irony is that so these things are actually mostly later, not at first. This is later, not at first. But it is indicative of the 20s. What we forget, and is actually more important, is the reform. As soon as the war is over, what two huge reforms do we pass? The 18th and 19th Amendments. Which is which?
18th is prohibition, 19th is suffrage.
How do you remember this? Okay, women haven't been allowed to be in the vote. Why? I didn't spend a lot of time on this, and I don't want you to read your textbook to get their argument, because their argument is actually very much a 2020 argument, not a 1919 argument. In 1915, you had very famous women who did not think women should get the right to vote. Have you read about these people? No. Why? It's very radical. Why would a woman not want the vote? It's this concept of moral superiority. Your book will sometimes refer to separate spheres, but they usually refer to this as something that men forced on women. But women strongly believed this. I am the mother of the children. I am the first teacher of my children. I don't get into politics because politics is dirty. Isn't that what we've been learning for the past 15 years of progressivism? Isn't that what the muckrakers were exposing all the time? That they're dirty? Women shouldn't be dirtied by this. But the problem is that there is this sense of a moral superiority. And it doesn't take very long. Who are the people that are most pushing to get rid of alcohol? Women. Because it's the drunken men who are the ones that are drunk, not the women. And so when we look at World War I, and if we think of World War I as a mistake, then we blame it on drunk men. And you think I'm kidding. Help me keep him pure. Please vote against the sale of liquors. Let's give you this other fun picture. I love this one. We make people poor. We cause poverty and crime. We are against the powerless. And if you look back here, you've got Germans in there. Because, of course, who was also making all the beer companies in Milwaukee? German. There's a combination of the war and beer. This is Hun Rule Association. What are the Huns? Germans. back from the war and we say we're going to eliminate all of these evils. So we're going to allow, first of all, women to vote. Why are we going to allow women to vote? Because they have a moral superiority. The hope is that women will clean politics. But in order to make sure that the world is clean for them, what also are we going to do? We're going to get rid of alcohol. Because if we can get rid of alcohol, that'll be half the cleaning of politics. Get rid of alcohol, that's how you remember 18th and 19th. Alcohol out to make it a cleaner environment, then women have the right to vote. These are huge reforms, shockingly huge. And it is exactly after the war. Is this not progressivism? Now, insight into historical thinking here. The fact is the 1920s has two different forces. That's the whole definition of disillusionment, kind of confusion. If we had consensus, we wouldn't have two different directions. Some historians will look at this, and they'll look at the United States afterwards, and they'll say, we come back and we just fall into the Jazz Age. And so then they don't emphasize the reform element. But if you look on it as a reform, what does that say about the progressive era? If you look at the Jazz Age as giving up on all this hope, you're going to argue that the progressive era is from 1900 to 1915. As soon as the war starts, the progressive era ends. If you see these reforms as an example of progressivism, then you would argue that the progressive era actually pushes into the 30s. I'm actually on this side. Your textbooks have totally different definitions, and sometimes they don't even want to confuse you with this, and so they'll just say, yeah, after this, progressivism is gone. But if you do this, then how do you explain what's going on with alcohol? We've got all of about 30 seconds. Let me finish this last 30 seconds. And you need to understand this when we talk about reform. 30 seconds. You guys read about Harding. What do you remember about Harding? First of all, Harding is going to get in there because no Democrat's going to win 1920. Why isn't the Democrat going to win 1920? Because Wilson screwed it up. Democrats are out. So it could have been a monkey and Republican would have won 1920. So Harding wins. And Harding's actually pretty respected, but he doesn't really do very much. If you look at Harding, you think Teapot Dome scandal. What you have to understand is the Teapot Dome scandal doesn't actually come to fruition, come to light until 1923. He goes up on his trip up to Alaska, he comes back and he dies when he's in office. One of the reasons why he goes up to Alaska is because he knows that these scandals are brewing, but the public doesn't really know about it. He is not involved with them. Part of the reason why we have so many scandals is that the war has got so much more money going through the government than it ever had. And so the likelihood of some of that money being diverted is greater, and that's exactly what happened. Yet people off in Wyoming who are giving deals to oil companies for kickbacks. Not a bribe, but saying, why don't you give me a loan for $1 million, and then we just won't worry about paying it back. So plain language, that's a bribe, right? This is a scandal. Well, Harding dies. And who's left with this? His vice president, Coolidge. Coolidge is president. And the first thing he does is we are going to reform. I'm going to kick out all of these people that were in Harding's administration, and I'm going to have a clean administration. One of the ways I'm going to have a clean administration is to have less money coming into the government. I'm going to lower taxes. I'm going to make sure that we have very strict rules of reform. And he is shockingly popular. For the first time, you lower taxes, and the amount of money that comes into government actually increases because the productivity is so high. In 1928, everybody wants him to run again. He wins in 1924, and this would have been the first time that a president would have won more than 2 terms. And everybody expected that he would do it, and he easily would have walked right through. But because of his whole concept of restraint, he had a very short note saying, I will not run again. Just did. They call him Silent Cal. He was restrained in everything. I will not run again. And Hoover comes in and becomes the president. This is going to be hugely important, not for this unit, but for the next unit. I want you to look at the 20s as an example of reform. And if you can look at the 20s as an example of reform, then your essay question will make a lot more sense. Questions, comments, words of wisdom? We will be back on Tuesday to prep for the exam.